Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We are live. I apologize for being late. I had a emergency I had to take care of today, and otherwise, it's going to ruin my entire afternoon. But we got that handled, and we're able to jump on. So, thank you to Heather for being accommodating. Very unexpected. Something came up. The whole system was down. So, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off just a few minutes ago. So, anyways, we are going to jump into random acts of kindness and how they impact your social emotional development. So, this is something that Heather's very passionate about. She talks about this quite a bit. So let's jump into this, Heather. You want to talk about this, so let's jump in. I love learning about this stuff more and more. So, what is it about random acts of kindness that is particularly beneficial?
One thing that's unique about kindness is, I mean, there is a trait aspect to it, but it is more of there are behaviors or acts associated with it. So it makes it more concrete
Mm,
for our kids to understand than when you're just talking about an emotion. And then we can reflect on how you felt when the person did that thing for you or how you felt when you did that thing for someone else. We also want to talk about doing things for the benefit of the other person without the expectation of anything in return. But that's one reason this is so powerful, because when that it's a concrete thing they can understand, and then it actually chemically changes the brain. It really, it releases uh, oxytocin, which is like the love hormone chemical. It really acts like very similarly in the brain to an antidepressant because it increases serotonin. It decreases cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So it's beneficial for stress, anxiety, feelings of calm, but it's also cardioprotective, by the way. Because there have been lots of studies done on this, and those who engage in acts of kindness have lower blood pressure, just better overall heart health, decreased sensations of pain, like
mm,
physical pain. So it's a concrete way to talk about things that are abstract. It starts getting gratitude and generosity going because I'm reflecting on how someone went out of their way to help me, and then I put myself into the shoes of someone else, and how can I help them? And it also, so many of our kids feel things very largely. If you're excited, it's way, way like, woo, and if something is not to my liking, it's devastating. Kindness is something that it can take just a moment holding the door open for someone, or it can be really going out of your way and cooking a meal for someone or creating a fundraiser. But also starts growing flexibility and understanding shades and degrees of things, and that not everything is huge or non-existent. There are so
mm.
many just simple ways to sprinkle it through a day.
So, kind of when I think about random too, I also think about not premeditated, right? So, is there something to that not being to not premeditating upon it? Like, sometimes when you premeditate on something, you're thinking like, what do I get from it? When it's more random, there's not that, like, it's just I'm doing this kind of like out of the goodness of I want to make this person happy, or I think they could benefit from it. So it's not always that premeditation of like, because as humans we're always thinking like, we get something from giving, right? Whether it's joy, happiness, warmth, something out of return, whatever it may be. But when it's more spontaneous, is that kind of it strips some of that out of there, right? Like some of the
Right.
kind of the forefront of what we're thinking about.
Both are good, because if we plan things, I mean, you're really putting effort into something, and going out of your way to give of yourself. You're also working on executive function abilities because you're organizing or planning something bigger that you're going to do. But one really powerful thing about the random part of this, do any of your kids impulsive? Show them how that can also be spontaneity in a positive way. It also helps kids be present, be on the lookout for that person whose spirits you can lift up, the genuine compliment you can give, the smile. That it gets you more from just internally focused to paying attention to the world and engaged and connected with them in the moment. A lot of mindfulness there.
Yeah, I like that, the mindful aspect of it. That's huge. And it's so there's a lot to this too. So not only is there's that social aspect, like we're seeing that, but emotionally, and you talked about big. So let's kind of like, here's kind of my question here. So random is random, right? Like there's no kind of like forefront to that. So how can we kind of talk to our kids in a way that we can start trying to exercise, this, so that they're starting to think, okay, well, maybe I can act in a form of kindness here, or something else. So how can we get them kind of thinking about this before an event could happen, right? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Sure. One thing is something you and I like to talk about a lot. We talk about how kids learn through stories. There are lots of social emotional books you can read. You can even Google random act of kindness books, and there are websites and books that specifically give concrete examples of things you can do, so that's sort of on the radar. But another really good thing is to tie this to empathy. Sometimes there's sort of an empathy gap. And so you can say things like, do you remember that time you fell and hurt your knee, and you told me you don't know how bad it hurts? I'm making this up. And I didn't know because it hadn't happened to me. But what it made me think of was a time blah, blah, blah happened to me. And this is what made me feel better. And so what we kind of role playing or coming up with, hypothetical scenarios, and what would be a way you could be kind in that event. New kid at school, someone falls down, somebody's making fun of someone else. And when you're reading stories that have those threads in there, how do you think this person felt? What would you do in that situation? Would you be a bystander? Would you stand up for the person? Would you go to the teacher? But letting them fill in as many gaps as they can, and then filling in the ones they don't. But take them to times where they received kindness. How did that make you feel? And then they start realizing, hey, I have the power to help other people feel that way as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. It's always about the stories, right? That's how we connect. Okay. And what about, so how do we praise them in an appropriate manner for acts of kindness? My son's kind of at the point right now where he's trying to negotiate rewards for things like, oh, I did this, therefore, Dad, can I have this piece of candy? He's trying to strategize a little bit with me. But what are some ways that we can uplift those acts of kindness without, giving candy? Okay, so this is partly for me. I'm just teasing, but how can we do that also just to promote it, right? Like, part of, we love what it's doing for them, but I also, I love the idea of giving them praise for it too, right? Because we're encouraging that line of thought and that line of action. Mm-hmm. And so how do we praise them as well in a very constructive way?
Yeah, I love this, because it's not about we talk a lot about rejection sensitivity and kids thinking that they are defined by their actions. Mm-hmm. So that also means that if we're praising them for the act they did and focusing more on that, then they are also a failure or a bad person when they make a wrong choice or do something that wasn't good. So we want to talk about the qualities that went into it more than the act itself. Or we can talk, what made you come up with that idea? Why did you do that for that person? And you're praising the process, the thought process, the thoughtfulness, the empathy. We talked before about how the most grateful people in the world, they don't just say thank you, which that's just a manner. It's a nicety, which is good, but that doesn't mean I feel gratitude. The most grateful people think about the cost to the other person, the time or the effort or the individualization they put into something, if it's something that required more planning and not random, but the benefit that they received from it, that made me feel really hopeful when I was feeling really in dark days. So you're thinking about the cost and the benefit, what went into it. And so that also, I think, really applies to praise. And when we talk about a growth mindset, it's very important to praise process, qualities that were demonstrated in what they did, and the creativity. And so they understand that we are talking about their character, not the act itself. You don't, it's not about earning gold stars for doing something nice. It's about who you're becoming. And so focusing on the right things in the praise, you're still acknowledging it. Another thing I really like is to come up with kindness practices as a family. The kids can even have a little family meeting. We're going to focus on kindness, and that could be the word of the month or something. I mean, you always want to cultivate it, but talk about what it means and how it benefits others and that kind of thing, and how you are not looking for anything in return, that it's a reward enough itself knowing you did the right thing. And they're going, if you have them pause and think about how they felt after they did something kind for someone, and ask the right questions, they're going to realize, because chemicals are being released in their brain that are making them feel better, and they're going to realize that is knowing it benefited someone else, that is the most important reward, but it also very organically benefited them because they feel better. It lifts moods. That we talk also about not, I just lost my train of thought.
Okay.
But anyway, it's gone. But when you cultivate practices as a family, whether it is a kindness jar or you come up with something you're going to do on Saturday, or nothing that's planned, it's still going to be random. We're going out to the park. Let's see what we can do to be kind today.
Pretty cool.
And then talk about that and the feelings and how do you think that person felt before? How did they feel after you did it? These are such strong connections in the brain. Not only you're actually rewiring and growing neural pathways in the brain that can replace all this an inward focus. When we get kids in touch with that, they're not going to be seeking that extraneous reward as much.
Very cool. And so, I have to ask this question then, because with any act of kindness, but in particularly with some random acts of kindness, especially if they're young kiddos, sometimes that random act gets rejected, right? I tried to give my best friend Tommy, something, and he rejected me. And so they're kind of put off by that, right? Like, why didn't Tommy why didn't little Susie want my gift or whatever I gave them, right? So how do we talk them through that too? Because like you mentioned previously, sometimes our emotions are large, right? And they can be quite big. And we do oftentimes have some rejection sensitivity too, in a lot of the kids that we see. And so how do we help them balance or understand that, even though what we did was awesome and we were trying to help this person, sometimes maybe in the moment they don't want that, or, maybe they misunderstood. So how can we help them through that kind of that sense of rejection?
Depending on the age, what the most powerful lesson, like overarching thing, and the way you go about it can differ according to developmental level.
100%.
But is to, from the very early ages, help kids get in the natural framework of thinking about the things they can control and the things they can't control.
100%.
And so through stories and also in the moment when those things happened, one of the biggest things that leads to frustrations and disappointment in any relationship are when we have certain expectations and someone doesn't live up to that. But really always cultivating the concept of we can control our thoughts, our behaviors, our responses to things, our decisions. We cannot control that of others. And having those conversations and weaving it, just that needs to be an ongoing conversation. But when you think about what is something we could not control about that situation. When Timmy said that to Jason, and you can even like blow bubbles, let's pop that one because we can't do anything about that one. You can even have a concrete activity and seeing the pop, that's like, it's gone. I don't need to worry about that. It doesn't mean it's completely erased from mind, but it is giving it's a metaphor for it. A really powerful one is leaves on a stream. When anything that you're sort of ruminating about, or that's kind of, you're getting into a spinning cycle in the head about and overthinking, is picturing those worries, anxieties, fears, things that have you frustrated, placing those thoughts on leaves and visualizing them washing away down a stream. They're just being carried away. They're gone. Now, what are the things I can control? And also being sure to talk about the response to the unfavorable reaction to the kindness. So not just stopping with what you did and then so-and-so behaved this way. What did you say to him, or how'd you handle it? Would you do anything differently next time? Why? And kind of, the more we role play, it's like dress rehearsals for when the real thing happens.
There's two things I want to highlight there. I think also we can just emphasize, or try to emphasize, at least the idea that it's not a rejection of you, right? Like, it's not a rejection of Brian. It's just maybe this wasn't the right time for that, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So just helping them understand that you're not being rejected. It's just the act was not, maybe it was the right time or right place, or whatever the circumstances may dictate there. So, and then secondly, what I try to do too is redirect and say, hey, you know what? Maybe Tommy didn't need that at this time. Is there anybody else that you can think of that could benefit from this? And try to give them a chance to redeploy that act of kindness to somebody else and say, you know what, Tommy couldn't use it, but maybe Bobby could, and give them an opportunity to, go through it again. And so I find that oftentimes that helps as well, because
Yeah.
they're not focusing on me anymore again about how, Tommy rejected me. Oh, Bobby, I know Bobby said he loved the color red, and then we can go to Bobby, and Bobby obviously loves it. So
Yeah.
I think those can be very helpful implementations as well.
Well, yes, I love that. There's two big things that stand out to me about that. And one is we're also teaching kids greater insights into people, because making sure that we are, to the best of our ability, customizing what kindness was to what that person's wants and needs are. And that is huge for empathy development and theory of mind, truly being able to put yourself into someone else's shoes. And the other part about that is bringing up a time where, has there ever been a time someone tried to do something kind for you and it felt even more frustrating, or it just felt like they didn't know what you really needed in that moment? And talking through those times, you can say, I remember when your sister tried to comfort you when XYZ happened. And you're like, no, do you remember that? And that's okay. That's how you were feeling right then. How do you think Jason was feeling when he responded to you that way? So you're not saying the behavior is okay. You're helping them understand the emotion behind the behavior. And we also want to do that. If I understand the emotions behind my behaviors, it's going to help me understand the emotions behind others as well.
100%. Okay, awesome. I know we started late, so I don't want to, I know we all have schedules and everything, so we don't want to take this on too long and go further than our normal time. But is there anything else that you'd like to highlight? We talked about storytelling and helping them develop it. We've talked about instances of rejection, maybe, just in how to navigate. Anything else that you think could be beneficial as far as starting to implement this stuff with our kiddos?
I just thought of the thought when I lost it earlier.
Yeah, let's go.
And one other benefit of kindness is that we talk a lot about, it's much better to replace one thought or behavior with another than to say, don't think that. If I tell you not to think about elephants are going to jump in your head right away. And so another benefit of kindness is it's giving pro-social communication. We are talking to kids about the behavior we do want, not what we don't want. Yep. And so instead of saying don't yell, we want to talk, speak softly, gently, indoor voice, tell them what to do. And so if you see, even if it's with siblings, instead of telling them not to fight, talk to them, what is something kind you could do for your sister? When you start doing kind things for other people and you can't even help that you're feeling chemicals in your brain that make you feel connected to that person, you're going to organically grow that relationship more. You're getting out of sort of this negative bias in the way you're speaking about things, and you are truly foundationally improving that relationship. And if you're doing kindness practices as a family, it's really nice just to tie this all together and talking about the intrinsic reward of kindness, is to also, in the moment, as soon as something kind happens, how do you think that made that person feel? How do you feel? It grows self-esteem big time and self-worth. But also over time, weekly check-ins or at the end of the month, talking about improvements you've seen in family dynamics or between peers or something like that, helping them also see the details and the big picture, and also how one rung on the ladder, taking one right step, keeps building on itself and becomes big things. And that can also translate into, I'm trying to be a better reader, better at this, that, and the other. And it just feels like this monstrous thing that I can't accomplish one step at a time. And wow, big changes happened.
Ooh. Yeah. So if you kind of follow the research, your brain, when it just when it starts dwelling on stuff, it starts manifesting it, right? So if we think about gratitude and kindness and all these other things, we just start manifesting. So those little steps, like just the daily idea of, is there something I could do kind for somebody? Can we start fostering those on a daily basis? Those little small, rungs until it just starts becoming a habit, right? Which I think is awesome. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. All right. That is it for me today. Anything else, Heather? Just want to make sure I'm not cutting you short on anything.
Okay. No, I think this is good.
Perfect. I want to do an episode on gratitude. I had an opportunity to listen to a great podcast. I loved it. All things Heather talks about. I mean, this Stanford professor was, talking about. We also had some really cool insights into just gratitude practices and other things like that. So that is something that I want to discuss in the future. So we'll bring that up. And we're also going to pepper in again those primitive reflexes. So I think we have a lot of fun things coming up, assuming I don't have any mini emergencies that influence my business again. But we are good to go. Heather, where do we find more of you? And I know you have another podcast. Let's talk about where do we find you first?
At The Hidden Churn on Instagram or Facebook, or Brain Balance of the Woodlands, Katy, Mansfield, or Southlake.
Awesome. So make sure you go follow those pages. Lots of great content. Like I mentioned, she has another podcast that's Tuesdays at 11 a.m. And are you all having one this week?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is about self-sabotage and how to move past this paralyzing self-doubt into growth-inducing action. Why do we self-sabotage? What gets in the way of self-worth? And why do we become paralyzed, and what to do to really kind of turn the corner on that?
All right. Well, that will be a good episode. I might have to tune into that one myself. That sounds amazing. So make sure you tune into that. Go follow those pages. That's where you'll get alerts and reminders for that podcast. All right. We will be back next week, ideally at our time, which is 1 o'clock when we're scheduled, assuming nothing happens. But we'll be back next week. And if there's something that, we talked about, we're like, I would love to know more about that, or like to hear more about the topic, or I just have a question about it, please message us directly. Make sure you comment. We will respond to that. And as always, there is somebody out there, a neighbor, friend, teacher, whoever it may be, family member, who needs to hear some of this. And so please share that with them. We know this gets out there. We get messages all the time from people who are just saying that they learned a lot, and we appreciate that. So there's somebody out there who needs to hear this. Please share that with them. All right, we'll be back next week. Thank you again, as always, Heather, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.